Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I am your host and producer. My name is James Pagoshnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from theathletic.com. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, are you done hexing the moon yet?
I did not hex the moon. I, in fact, am spreading the word so that we can collectively, as a society, unhex the moon. This is important.
You are helping raise awareness through a series of Live Strong style bracelets and terrible memes, which is probably how they got to this place to begin with the hexing of the moon. If you would like to know more about it, unhexing the moon, you can go to our Patreon and listen to Arif describe it to me for 10 minutes as I pull my hair out and wonder why we're having this conversation. Actually, I know why we're having this conversation, because I asked him what's with the moon stuff that was being tweeted to us, so really I got what I deserved. Fun story. So welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Oh, the moon is never going to be the same after this, and neither are we. We've got a few things to talk about. We are theoretically going to have football in the fall, maybe, and there are a few things involving COVID procedures on the NFL that should be discussed, along with Peter King's piece. Also, there is no new deal for Anthony Harris, which was not entirely unexpected, and we also have a massive mailbag. But before any of that, just want to thank you guys so much for listening. We will be continuing to do the Patreon thing with some bonus content. If you would like to access that, you can go to patreon.com/NorseCode, and for $3.50 a month or $3.50, you can have access to all of our bonus episodes. Some of them last a few minutes. Some of them are up to 30 or 40. Others are an hour and a half for a long clip show. So if you're interested in more of Arif and James, you can go to patreon.com/NorseCode. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well for a one-time donation. All right, let's get into the actual show and not talk about the moon anymore. Probably.
The Minnesota Vikings.
The moon. I hate you. I don't want to. I'm muscling through this because one of the dumbest things I've ever heard crawled into my ear all of 5 minutes ago, and I'm really trying to focus on this. It was the shortest.
We are 40 minutes past our initial scheduled recording time, and a lot of this was consumed by the moon.
I hate everything at the moment. Let's cheer me up and talk about COVID stuff. So what exactly? So Peter King had a piece out this week about what the Minnesota Vikings are doing in Eagan to try to prevent the spread of the disease if it were to come into the facility. And many teams are doing very similar things. So what are players running into when they are going to the facilities? What are the teams doing exactly?
So nothing is confirmed because we don't have every set of NFL protocols ahead of us. And in fact, the NFL doesn't have every set of NFL protocols sent to teams. So right now, the facility protocol, essentially how the facility needs to be managed, that's been set up and teams in theory are following it. The Vikings have taken that set of protocols. And according to Eric Sugarman, who, the Minnesota media was on a call with actually earlier today too. So I can supplement some of what we saw in the Peter King piece. Said that, they took those protocols and they found ways to make them more stringent because the Vikings have a really expansive facility. They've got a lot of space. And because it's, one of the newest facilities in the NFL, they've got an opportunity to do a lot more to kind of preserve player safety. And what I found kind of interesting was that Sugarman was in some ways and he does this in the Peter King piece as well. He also makes the point that this is a competitive advantage, right? Because the teams that are best prepared to handle these kind of contingencies and kind of reduce incidences of the disease popping up in their players are most likely to succeed during the season, which is a good point, right? That's true. And so the Vikings are taking advantage of the fact that they've got a newer facility with a lot of space. So there's a lot of things that they'll have to do. The first is players in groups of 4 will be tested in this trailer that is on Mike Zimmer's parking spot.
That might have been the best detail of the entire piece, quite frankly. That Mike Zimmer lost his spot due to the trailer.
Yeah, apparently he just like swore once and then he just got over it because like, duh. But it's the front seat, right? It's the first parking space. But yeah, so this trailer has got 4 different testing units in it. Player gets tested, takes a couple of minutes, they leave, and then from my understanding, the protocol is such that after a player gets a negative test, they go in to get retested. And if they get another negative test, which could take 24 to 48 hours, they can now enter the facility. That's my understanding. And rookies are reporting soon, so presumably that they've already maybe begun testing. I don't know. So that's my understanding. But that's NFL protocol potentially. So that's not something that the Vikings have, from my understanding, have nailed down completely. They just have that testing facility set up. It's done in a way to kind of preserve distancing, right? So 4 people need to leave before 4 people can enter. The 4 people who enter will be entering, like 6 feet apart and all that. So there's that. And the testing turnaround takes quite a bit of time. So we don't know how frequent the testing is. Again, that's going to be up to NFL protocol, whether or not the NFL is going to provide teams with, financial assistance to make that happen, whether or not teams will be doing that themselves, right? Because teams are, not exactly bereft of cash or anything like that. But there's still trying to figure out what testing frequency is. And the 24-hour to 48-hour wait time is pretty interesting, right? Because you could have a player that's positive and will test positive, take a test, and then go into, right? Like, let's say they've tested negative for the past 3 or 4 tests, right? So they've been in the facility and all that. And for some reason they catch it. Maybe, they went back home and, their wife caught it from a coworker, whatever, right? Some reason they catch it. And they go back into the facility and they get tested. And then they go into the facility and do all the different stuff, right? And I'll talk about kind of what it's like to be in the facility. And then they practice, and then they could potentially expose a bunch of other players, especially if they're a lineman of some sort, where your whole job is to be in contact with people in a very close and limited space. Then we find out 24 hours later that entire time they were positive and potentially shedding virus. And of course, if they're asymptomatic, they're less likely to shed virus. So there's that. But that's a problem that J.C. Tretter, president of the NFLPA, brought up in his piece, which is at NFLPA.com. We'll link what his concerns are. I wouldn't even say they're objections, but his concerns are with the NFLPA's negotiations with the NFL, because one of the reasons that the testing protocol isn't ready yet, and I'm sure we'll get to more as we hit the mailbag, one of the reasons that the protocol isn't ready yet is because there's this kind of discussion happening between the NFL and the NFLPA. So that's, one concern. But, they get tested and then they go in and they have to, in order to enter, they have an app on their phone where they have to fill out a quick survey. So this happens every time they enter. They fill out a quick survey, your symptoms, have you had contact with anybody who's had symptoms, et cetera. And after they fill out the survey, there is a tablet device. I guess it's not actually an iPad with an extension, which is what I assumed it was, but it's a tablet of some sort. And that unlocks for the player. And that tablet, its sole purpose is to be one of those temperature scanners. So it's a contactless temperature scanner, and it doesn't even work unless you're wearing a mask. So you have to be wearing a mask. You have to have entered the survey, and then it unlocks for you, and then it takes your temperature. And if you're good to go, if you're not running a fever, then you can enter the building. So that's how it is once you get in. And then once you get in, everything is distanced 6 feet apart. There's no team meetings larger than 20 unless there's like a meeting room. So the full meeting room, the whole team meeting room, which can seat 90 players and then some, that will only seat up to 40 players because they have made sure in this like diagonal pattern that players are always 6 feet apart from each other. So no meetings of larger than 46, but generally speaking, there will be or larger than 40, but generally speaking, there will just generally be no meetings above 20. They'll be done over, Zoom or whatever, right? So In the locker rooms, the lockers and the Vikings are probably the best setup for this, but it's going to be difficult. I've been in that locker room when during training camp when there's 90 people and it's cramped, and the Vikings have the best version of a locker room there for them to be able to kind of distance. So there's going to be a supplemental locker room, I assume. But in that locker room, players are going to be seated 6 feet apart from each other in the locker room. Showers are 6 feet apart. Every other shower head is turned off. And then there's plastic dividers between lockers and showers and stuff like that. If at some point a player begins showing symptoms, there's a whole room set up just for people who show symptoms, and it's got all kinds of stuff for if, one of the symptoms could be nausea, so they've got stuff to deal with that. They've got basic medical supplies and stuff like that set up in that room, and there's constant signs to socially distance. Apparently, people are going to be wearing these bands on their arms, and that's primarily for staff, but I assume the players might be wearing them too. But people will be designated into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And tier 1 has direct contact with the players. Think like Mike Zimmer. Tier 2 has direct contact with the people who have direct contact with the players, and I think also occasional contact with the players. So there's a maximum of 60 people that can be tier 1, a maximum of 40 people that can be tier 2, and that's it, right? And then tier 3 are people that cannot have contact with anybody tier 1, tier 2. So either tier 1 or tier 2. And those bands serve a purpose. If you are within 6 feet of somebody who is a different or is tier 2 or tier 1 and you're tier 3, an alarm goes off. And I think Sugarman also mentioned that 10 feet away, there might be a vibration to kind of let you know. And these are the people kind of running the back end that don't need to have contact with tier 2 people. So these are the people helping clean the building. These are the people helping run the electronics or maintain the utilities or stuff like that. So people that are critical to the functioning of the team but don't need to interact with, say, Rick Spielman for anything, right? And so and the problem is they've also, in order to, and there's a maximum number for that, in order to cut down on in order to meet these limits, they've had to cut down on staff, which sucks, right, for a lot of people that I assume were relying on this job. And a number of tier 1 and tier 2 people, including, Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer and the other coaches and front office personnel, will also be engaging in stuff like cleanup. They've got technology for sanitation. They've got an electrostatic machine that spreads some kind of sanitizer that sinks in deep into things like furniture. So it cleans a lot better than a typical sanitizer. It's got this whole thing. I'm not very familiar with it. The video at it's not Monday Morning Quarter, NBC Sports, right? That's where Peter King is now. What does he call his column now? It's FMIA.
I think it was Football Morning in America.
Yeah. There's a whole video of him using it, which is kind of cool. So, the weight room, there's a maximum of 20 people that can use the weight room at a time. The cafeteria, I think the maximum is 40, but I don't think they even plan on having that because the cafeteria is designed to be pick up and go. Nobody's going to be handling the food aside from the food service people. And so it used to be kind of open food buffet, whatever. Instead, you order via the app your food, and then they package it up for you. You go in, you get out, you spend maybe 15 seconds in there. And so I think that's the idea there. The recovery tubs, which are hot and cold tubs, they normally seat 15. Now they seat 6. And that's how you get, I know the SIP says 12, but, Sugarman said 15 and he showed us a picture of them. And I think it's 15, but now they seat 6. There's going to be additional cold tubs during training camp because 90 people, right? And so there'll be a bunch of individual tubs, which is what NFL teams used to have anyway. So there's that. A bunch of different smaller meeting rooms. It's so there's a ton that they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's great. One is forced to ask the question, and I didn't ask Sugarman this, and I feel really stupid. It's my job. But one has to be a little bit kind of confused or concerned about the fact that they'll be playing football, right? And that's outdoors, right? So there's, a little bit less of a chance of transmission. But there's contact. You're lining up across from each other. There's going to be a huddle. You're doing drills pretty close to each other. If you're an offensive lineman, your feet are 6 inches away. Like that's the goal of a 6-inch split, right? Your feet are 6 inches away from the person next to you, right? You're 2 feet away from the person next to you. You're 3 feet away from the person across from you, because defensive linemen want to line up as close as they can. Legally, they can line up as close as to a yard away from you, and in practice, even closer, right? So that's all within 6 feet, and these people are engaging in very heavy breathing, right? They're not engaging in the light conversation that the 6 feet protocol is designed for, right? It's just for regular conversation. The important thing to keep in mind here is that what matters is viral load. So it's not, if you get like one virus particle in you, it's very typically just not going to do anything. I saw a Twitter thread. It may be out of date at this point, so I'm just going to use this as an example of the concept, because the concept's fine. But in the Twitter thread, they said it's probably 1,000 virus particles that they seem to think would be kind of the threshold for most people to get infected. And everyone's immune system is a little bit different. If you're 4 feet away from somebody at a dinner table, and you're there for 20 minutes, you're likely to hit that 1,000 viral particle threshold, right? Where let's say you're eating outside, you're 4 feet away, you're engaging in small talk, no one's very animated, it's just kind of casual conversation. All of your interactions, each individual kind of minute of that interaction is going to be very low risk, but the risk adds up as you exchange fluid particles, which sounds really gross, but that's what happens, right? And so at some point you'll hit the 1,000 viral load threshold. So if somebody coughs in your face for a second, almost certainly you've got 1,000 viral particles now floating around your breathing apparatus, right? But that's only for a second, right? But that's a high viral load that's going to hit the threshold. If you're talking to someone 4 feet away who's asymptomatic but shedding virus, and you talk to them for 20 minutes, you're probably going to hit the viral load threshold. So a short amount of time where there's a high risk of a lot of aerosolized viral particles entering into your breathing system, or a long amount of time where there's a small amount of aerosolized viral particles hanging around in the air, both of those can potentially infect you with the coronavirus and then cause the disease COVID-19. So that's where my concern is, because they've minimized inside the facility where, and again, indoors, significantly higher risk, they've minimized inside the facility that second scenario, a small amount of viral transmission over a long period of time. It very much seems like there's not a lot of opportunities for people to be close enough for that viral transmission to occur ever, because a lot of times people will just be 6 feet away. And when you're 6 feet away, you're not always facing each other, right? And that's important too. 6 feet away is designed for like facing each other. If you're facing the other direction, not nearly as big of a concern. Although again, inside, different story, right? They've minimized the chance for those low transmission, high contact time moments, right? I know we've got medical professionals that listen to this podcast, and I assume at least one of them is a virologist. So please, if we've got something wrong, if I've got something wrong, send us an email. I'm sure you will anyway, but this is like an invitation to do that.
Please correct Arif is what he's trying to say.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Don't get that enough. You know that. But yeah, so they've minimized that. But my concern is the other end of that, where somebody who is probably asymptomatic, so it's not as like bad. But if you're playing football, if you're a center and you're getting right up into a nose tackle's chest, and they're breathing on you and you're breathing on them, totally normal thing, right? And the play is 3 seconds, and then you do that like 40 times over the course of a practice, and then you huddle up, maybe 10 times over the course of a practice, and then you go into individual blocking drills, and now you're blocking a guard who's pretending to be a nose tackle. You're doing that, 20 times. Like, there's so many moments where there's a potential for a high contact, low contact time transmission period, and I didn't really get any answers from that aside from some examples of masks that will be placed in the helmets, which we've already seen on Twitter, those masks. So yeah, which go on the helmets. They're not like masks in the sense that they attach directly to your face. Everybody's got like the plastic visor over the eye, and then there's now an additional plastic thing that goes right behind the face bars. And there's like little vents and stuff like that. And I don't know how effective they are. I mean, they just ruled them out and sold them to the NFL, and the NFL bought them. I don't think there's any testing.
This whole thing, and I have said this about my own work, trying to figure out what they're going to do for kids coming back to college or kids going back to school for K through 12. All of this reeks of knock on wood.
It really does. And one thing I found really interesting, of all people, which I guess I don't actually know who he is as a person, so maybe that's not fair, but we know who his dad is. So Mark Davis, Al Davis' son, was pretty pessimistic about the possibility of a season, relatively speaking. He still thought a season was going to happen, but he was like uncertain. He was open to the possibility that we're not even going to have a 2020 season, which the reason that stuck out to me, aside from the fact that, Mark Davis feels like kind of an eccentric that's like a little out of touch because he has to like fly to get his crappy haircut. About that story, right?
He's a man of principle. Yes, I've heard about Mark Davis's haircut, and
he only allows one person to do it, and it's not where he lives, so he just flies to it every time he gets a haircut.
If you have that much money, you can do it. Also, it's insane.
Right. So, but here's the thing about the Raiders, and the thing about Mark Davis. Out of all of the owners in the NFL, he has the least amount of money, which also tells you what that means when he gets to fly to do a haircut every time he wants to get a haircut. But he has the least amount of money, and he is the most reliant out of any NFL owner on NFL income, right? It's not like the Tepper, I think, is the name of the person that just bought the Panthers, or it's not like the Wilfs, where Tepper's a hedge fund manager. Wilfs are real estate. I'm going to be delicate here, business people. Or like, the Maras and the Rooners are primarily football families. That's where they get a bunch of their income. But the Crafts, they own paper. Shad Khan's a real estate magnate. So Jerry Jones is like a wildcatter, right? His money's in oil, I think.
Yes.
So it's not like a lot of these owners that bought teams that already had an income stream from something else. Davis, and to some extent, the Maras and the Roonies, they rely on the football income for their income. And so for Mark Davis to say, God, I don't know if we're having a season, that struck me as phenomenally interesting.
For obvious reasons, there's reasons to wonder whether or not this is actually going to work. Unlike the NBA's plan where everyone was just being sequestered, and they announced today that they have 0 positive tests in like 5 days or something like that. Like, you're still having everyone, go back to their homes and everything, be with their families. It's not like they're being sequestered thousands of miles from their home and away from their families and everything. Like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong in this scenario. And I hate to be that sort of negative person, but like, Florida has exploded as far as cases are concerned. And a lot of these states, Texas, California, are in incredibly rough shape. Hell, baseball, which has managed to find a way to get itself back and looking like they're going to actually be playing real games here. The city of Toronto in Canada has said, you can't have home games here because we're not flying Americans in. Like, there's a number of things have gone horribly wrong as this thing has managed to get worse. And for a game as physical as football, I want it so badly to happen. I want there to be games, but boy, it just seems like a lot of planning for something they don't have a lot of control over. Or like, it's the illusion of safety in all of this. It's the it's the floating seat from your airplane or on your airplane just in case you crash in water.
Right. Yeah, I've said this on two other podcast appearances so far, but it bothers me enough that I'll say it again. I desperately want a season for so many reasons. A, I got into this because I'm a football fan, right? Like, it's the whole reason I started writing about football. But B, now my income relies entirely, completely on there being a football season, right? Like, I'm a sports writer, and I'm super happy, right? That now I get to live an entire income off of that job, which is an insane, impossible dream. I'm really happy about it. And now we're at a point where it looks like a season may be canceled. A bunch of my colleagues at the same company that I work at got laid off. And if there's no season, I don't know what that looks like, right? And so I desperately want a season for a lot of reasons. I rely on it for my income. I love football. It's what I do in the fall. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And I told somebody in one of my group chats, I don't know, I might just start streaming League of Legends. I've never played it before, but like that seems like the thing kids are into these days, right? You know, like the MTV and the League of Legends and the internet and the Twitch streams. I'll do that.
Wow.
We'll see how that goes. You know, like I have no idea what I'm going to do in the fall if there's no football. So I really want there to be a football season. I also do not want a football season enough that somebody could die. And I don't necessarily mean a football player, although that's in the cards, right? But if a football player's like mother or wife, you know, comes down with it and has a lifelong complication as a result of, you know, being asked to play football, I would feel awful about pushing for a season in a scenario where we just don't have this handled. So that's the first thing that I've said on every podcast thus far. The second thing that I'm going to say again on this podcast that I've said in every podcast thus far is that the people who are very confident that football players won't suffer long-term consequences for contracting the coronavirus, I don't know what their confidence stems from, but it is, in my mind, severely misplaced. And so I've talked to, informally, not like as a journalist, but like on Twitter, right? People that are informed in microbiology, in virology, and epidemiology on these questions, because I have a particular question about football players, right? It's my job. But, you know, I just have a question because it's my interest, right? And we just don't know what it looks like for somebody with the body type and the body stresses of a football player. And there's this assumption that football players are like healthy because they're elite athletes. And while there's definitely a correlation between being an elite athlete and being kind of just broadly or generally healthy, like it's very hard to run fast if you don't work out, right? And working out is one element of health, and having a physically fit body that's got, you know, cardiovascular health enough to work out and run fast is generally going to be it generally allows you to kind of reduce the risk factors associated with respiratory diseases. Fine. But it's not as if those players don't. It's like Von Miller has asthma, right? He's still dealing with the symptoms of having contracted COVID-19. But that's not. But it's not a one-to-one correlation. There's a lot of elements of health, and your immune system isn't necessarily good because you run fast. Again, probably a correlation, right? But it's not one-to-one. And in fact, there are a lot of football players that don't have really phenomenal immune systems. And we don't know all of the risk factors associated with COVID-19, right? So one question that has come up is obesity. So is obesity a risk factor? And this is a really complicated question, right? Because initially you say, hey, you know, people with obesity tend to suffer the worst effects of COVID-19 at a disproportionate rate compared to people who don't have it. But then the question is, well, why is that the case? And it may not be because they're physically larger. It may be because, you know, there's a higher incidence of diabetes. It might be because people with obesity also just happen to be people with lower incomes. And so that's, you know, why they're obese in the first place. It could be because of malnourishment when they were a kid. It could be because of an underlying condition. You know, it's not necessarily that obesity may cause it. It may be these underlying conditions, right? And so whether or not a 320-pound football player who contracted COVID-19 is in that risk group is an interesting question, right? Because they may not have those same risk factors because they might have a managed diet that's really incredibly good. They may not have diabetes, although a number of football players have had diabetes. Jay Cutler, Brandon Love, those are pretty good examples of it. But there are other football players who have or have had different types of diabetes that have played football in the NFL at a really high level. But they might not have a lot of the things associated with obesity. But on the same token, right? Maybe it is being physically larger, right? Because your heart has to pump more blood through your body and you have to get more oxygen to more of a body than you typically normally do. And if you get bigger, your heart doesn't get larger. It just has to work harder, right? And, more efficiently. Like, it's not as if it has to beat faster. The heart can be stronger, right? But it's still difficult, right? And there's so much that your body has to pump through. And so a restriction on your breathing could be a problem. What if as a child you were malnourished, right? A lot of football players come from backgrounds where they haven't necessarily had great, nutrition growing up. And so if you were malnourished as a kid, maybe that impacted your liver. Maybe, you've had heavy metal buildup, right? And that impacts your liver. Well, now we know that COVID-19 may interact with your liver in a pretty big way, right? And so we don't know what the interactions are there. We have no idea how it impacts a 280-pound, 6'5" person, right? We don't have a population sample large enough to say that it impacts these people. And then that's just the kind of player they are, the kind of person they are, right? 320-pound, 280-pound, all of these people are technically overweight according to BMI. That doesn't mean they're unhealthy, but it's a consideration, right? And they might be unhealthy in some respects because, again, their immune system may not be, on par with somebody else who contracts it, right? Then, in addition to all of that, what about the higher rates of blood pressure? What about, there's a lot of football among Black people. What about the football players that might have sickle cell trait or sickle cell syndrome? Well, if they have sickle cell syndrome, it might be difficult. But if they have sickle cell trait, we've seen that in the NFL. They haven't been able to play in Denver. I think Ryan Clark is a good example of that. They don't get to play in Denver. Well, that's because the shape of your blood cells is different. Which actually is an adaptation in particular environments, but in this case means that you're less likely to be, or you're less able to carry oxygen to parts of your body. Well, now a respiratory disease is really going to impact that, right? And so there's higher rates of particular diseases among populations, or particular syndromes or conditions among populations that might impact things. And then we have to get into the fact that they have a car crash every week. That's their job. They get into car crashes. Like, they have to physically repair their body. How much stress does that put on your body? I don't know what the interaction is there. Like, if your job is to tear a bunch of muscles every week and then get put on an enormous amount of painkillers, how does that interact with COVID? How does that interact with the disease? It's so difficult to tell. There's so many unknowns here for such a unique body type and a unique profession and a unique stress that gets put on the body that I'm not confident enough to say that just because they're in an age group, and not all of them are, but just because they're in an age group, that we're not gonna see potentially catastrophic consequences, which don't have to be death. We get focused on the death rate and we don't think about quality of life. There are people who are asymptomatic while they have it, who are apparently developing long-term symptoms that impact things like their breathing, right? And so I think Zachary Binney, an epidemiologist that's talked to, I know of him because he talked about his like side hustle is sports injuries and their fantasy implications. So this is something he's already deeply connected to. But his day job is an epidemiologist with a PhD, right? He said, well, the death rate in the age group is, for college players, is probably 0.03%. So it's even smaller than what a lot of people are saying, which I think 0.1%, which is great, right? The smaller, the better, right? But that's not the only concern. And then when we get out of college, we're looking at a different age range, right? Tom Brady is 40, right? Some of these kickers are 40. There's a broader age range here, and this is just the players. What about Mike Zimmer? What about the athletic trainers? What about the massage therapists? What about the acupuncturists?
What about the coaches who just had cancer scares?
Yeah, multiple coaches, right? Like what Chuck Pagano was one of them. Bruce Arians, one of them. The general manager for the Giants, one of them, right? They're potentially immunocompromised, right? That sounds like a big problem. So
it could potentially be, and a lot of this again is based upon things that they don't necessarily have a lot of control over, and so a lot of questions end up having to be asked of players. Like, is this something you're willing to expose yourself to, and the NFL has to figure out how to potentially make this safe or make it appear safe enough that people want to do it. One way that it appears that they're going to is by canceling the preseason, which some have argued quite well and most likely accurately that it's a giant money grab for fans to come and see games, and if there's no fans coming, what's the point?
So the player argument for canceling the preseason is actually pretty good. It's not that there's an increased risk of contracting the virus during the preseason, although, the earlier an event occurs with less preparation, the more likely it is that preparation is going to falter in some way. And there's even an argument that holding a preseason game would allow you to kind of test the game day procedure without as much risk, right? Because there's not going to be fans, right? So, but the primary argument from the player side about canceling the preseason is that there has not been an appropriate ramp up to condition the players' bodies to prevent injury, and the NFL Players Association cited the fact that after the 2011 lockout, there was an increase in injuries. I think a 45% increase in injuries broadly, or maybe just in ACL injuries, and a 23% in the other category, which is either broadly injuries or ACL injuries specifically. But either way, there was an increase after the 2011 lockout of injuries, and in particular of knee injuries. And so that, and it's a spike. It stands out. That's a pretty significant spike. And so they want there to be a long lead time. I think they're asking for like 48 days of training camp, which, as somebody who covers training camp like as thoroughly as I do, and I love training camp. I love seeing the 89th man on the roster make me think, hey, maybe he could make a roster in 2 years, right? I love, like, hey, that guy has never played football in his life. Let's see what he does. I'm such a nerd for this stuff. That sounds exhausting to me, but it sounds like it's probably the right move for the players to try and get acclimated to football play by the time football starts. So that, I think, is the primary argument from the player side of canceling the preseason. I do think that there's a function for preseason, which is I do think they do provide an evaluative tool for coaches. And I think that they use that evaluative tool. And I think it helps break ties and stuff like that. And I think if we didn't have a preseason, I don't know that Adam Thielen ever makes the team. I don't know that Marcus Sherrills ever makes the team. And so I think preseason matters, but I think there's like a necessary sacrifice to prevent the other kinds of player injuries that are not disease related because they haven't had an off season yet.
Yeah. This whole thing is one giant mess, and I wish we didn't have to deal with it, much like everybody else. But the Vikings and the rest of the NFL are trying their best to make sure that the fewest number of players die as a result of playing football during this. And that's the most chilling way I can put it, because that's what's going on. Like, it's an ugly situation, and nobody wants to be the one who says that there's no football this year. And we'll see if we get to that point. So before we go into the mailbag, just a quick update on Anthony Harris, who, correct me if I'm wrong, was offered the franchise tag. So he's tagged for this year. But the news out of the last couple of weeks is there is no new deal for Anthony Harris, which wasn't entirely unexpected.
Yeah. So the news broke a couple weeks ago that they were working on a deal, and that, I think, was the unexpected part. Because the initial talk was that they were going to trade him. The initial talk was that they were going to let him hit free agency, right? And I think that was right before the combine, and everyone was thinking that. And then they make the decision to franchise him, which allows them to trade him, and so they're going to trade him now. They're very clearly, that was like,
and apparently
really well
the Giants were a potential suitor.
Yeah, I guess, right? Yeah. So it seemed like he was just kind of out the door, and then that didn't materialize, probably because the price they got didn't match what they thought of Anthony Harris as a player, which is fine because he's a really excellent player. And so they were like, well, it's not the worst thing in the world to go into the season with 2 elite safeties. That's fine. That's what's happening. So they franchised him and they've got him for the year. So the idea that they would have a long-term deal for him, I think, was never in the cards. And then the news broke a few weeks ago, months ago. I can't keep track of time anymore. that they were going to work on a long-term deal. That was the surprise. And then the fact that that didn't materialize is kind of just a return to what our expectations were. I would imagine that they'll still be working on a long-term deal. The deadline, I think, just is an indication that they can't replace the current cap number or money. Any deal that's an extension will include this year's franchise contract as just a part of the deal. You can't work out of that from an NFL perspective. But if they were genuinely working towards a deal, I don't see why they wouldn't continue working towards the deal throughout the season and prevent him from hitting free agency if this is something that they really care about. So not a surprise. I don't know. The Vikings have been a really difficult team to read this year in terms of their offseason intentions because while you could say it was pretty easy to tell that they were going to cut like Linval Joseph, right? It seemed very likely based off of, not just the rumors, but literally what the Vikings said, that Anthony Harris was gone, that Everson Griffin was staying, right? They cut him and then they were going to bring him back, right? And that neither of those things happened. It's very difficult to read this team. That signing Michael Pierce was maybe, I wouldn't say I predicted it, right? I don't recall predicting anything like that, but it fits. It's expected. That makes a bunch of sense. And then signing like literally nobody else that you're confident will be a starter. It was a little unpredictable. I figured that they were going to take a shot. I know they didn't have cap space, but like they cleared up a ton with Kirk Cousins and then obviously with Stephon Diggs. And then they didn't do anything. So they've got like $12 million of cap space just hanging out, which you can roll over into the next year, but it still feels like a waste. And some of that's going to be consumed by the draft class, which I assume is going to be about $4 or $5 million. Normally it's $3 million, but large draft class. I don't. It's tough to see what this team is going to do. We knew that they were going to extend Everson Griffin back in 2009. We knew that they were going to extend Danielle Hunter. We knew that a lot of the extensions that the Vikings make for their, second contract guys, which Anthony Harris would be, happen well. We know about them well before they happen. Eric Hendricks, Anthony Barr was somebody that we thought was going to be gone and then came back, was kind of a last minute surprise. I don't know what to make of Anthony Harris's contract situation with the Vikings going forward. I do know that he has played over the past year and a half like he might be contesting for the top safety in the NFL, which means he's contesting for top safety on the team in terms of production and ability and capability. So it's good to have him. I don't know what the next step is here for him.
Yeah, and this might be one of those like training camp like contracts that just get pushed their way through, or maybe they're saving that for Delvin, or waiting for Delvin to blink first over it. They had listed a number of running backs whose contracts were up and were potentially able to go into free agency next year. And there's this I'm not calling it a murderer's row, but there's a lot of running backs out there that are going to be looking for money next year. And I would not want to be a tier 1, tier 2 running back looking for money next year. There are way too many names, and somebody's going to end up getting a deal for cheap.
Yeah, it's tough to enter a crowded market like that, especially my understanding is that the draft class of running backs is going to be decent, not as good as it has been the past 2 years, but pretty decent, so people can always turn to that if they don't like the price either.
Yeah.
Assuming that, there's a draft.
Assuming there's a draft, assuming there's... Yeah. Nothing is for certain. All I know is this show will eventually come out. Probably. Yeah. All right.
Right.
That's the hope and fervent prayer. All right, let's go to the mailbag. And Nick asks the question, COVID was a thing way earlier this year, so can you explain why the NFL and the NFLPA are just now sitting down to iron out testing and processes required for camps to open and games to be played?
So I'm sure there's a good faith explanation that one could potentially use. I'm also sure I wouldn't believe it. It's just I'm curious to hear what the explanation for them being competent is, right? Like, if they're competent, why does it look like this? I'm just curious, right? What is the best argument for that to be? I'll listen to it. I cannot fathom believing it, but I'll listen to it because I don't know what it is.
Because everyone from the NFL was quote unquote working from home for the last 6 months. And for them, that meant spending time with their families, taking a mid-afternoon nap, catching up on Korean baseball and not checking their email or making any sort of like plan. It's why some people can work from home and some can't. This is why we may or may not have
Roger
football
Goodell
in
is
the
just
fall.
not a work from home person. Well, we saw that during the draft.
Yeah, you saw him falling asleep in the chair. Like that dude.
That was so brutal. I almost feel bad for him.
That is definitely not the first time he has fallen asleep in that chair while doing a work thing. Like,
that's incredible.
Absolutely not. You know, it could be argued that a number of things have changed between now and then, and that we know more now than we did in February. That said, it's still hard to believe that we're at this point.
So there's a broader political point I make in an upcoming episode of the Wide Left podcast that I did with Charles McDonald, the New York Daily News, also of Draft Twitter, where I think most people who listen to this podcast have heard of him, but he's a football writer for the New York Daily News. And also Patrick Claybon at the NFL Network, along with my co-host Ben Natan. So there's a larger political point I make here about the NFL not having a plan in place. And it has to do with, whether or not it's profitable to do contingency planning. That's all on the political podcast. What I'll say here is that what you said earlier, James, is that there is very much wishful thinking. Because you're right. I think that the NFL initially, when they're putting together some of these plans, thought, and honestly, quite reasonably, that this was going to be handled by the time people were going to report to training camp at the end of July, the beginning of August. You take a look at how other countries have handled it, and they all get back to normal within a couple of months, even kind of the worst case countries. Well, whoops, right? So that is a reasonable thought. What is unreasonable is to not make contingency plans and to not do your job for preparing for worst case scenarios, which honestly, worst case scenario, cancel the season because the country is dying, right? So you don't have to worry about the worst case scenario. But worst case scenario that applies to your industry is that this is running rampant, that this is still infectious, that cases are spiking, that there's a resurgence. And the thing is, it's not unreasonable to plan for a resurgence because a lot of people were warning about a resurgence in the fall, based off of data that may or may not have been that useful, right? Because there's a question about whether or not the interaction with temperature might stall the virus in the summer and then it kind of re-erupts in the fall. I don't think that that's true, but there are a lot of people warning about a resurgence. And so if there's a lot of people warning about a resurgence, you should at least have, it costs you almost nothing. It's manpower to kind of have to think about protocols and consult with scientists. And, that costs money. So I'm not saying it costs nothing, but it functionally costs you nothing as the NFL to make contingency plans and work it out with the NFLPA, who they have all the time in the world. JC Treader is not at the Packers facility. He's just at home being the president of the NFLPA. Just talk to him. He'll talk to the NFLPA's medical director. That medical director's job is this thing, right? And so you're not taking anyone's time away from something more important by engaging in this type of contingency planning. They just didn't do it. And the fact that as rookies report for the Texans and the Chiefs, there's no plan for what training camp looks like. There's no plan for what money is going to look like for players or the NFL side, which I cannot believe the NFL asked the players to take a 35% pay cut, while at the same time, the NFL owners would not see kind of a concurrent cut, right? They would just put the money in escrow or something from the player's own salary. Just wild, right?
So at a time you would think almost in the way of hazard pay at this point.
Right, yeah, and that's and baseball players make this point that it might as well just be hazard pay, honestly. And there's even a $500,000 hazard pay, which I don't think is per game. I think it's per 16 games. But there was a proposal in one of the NFLPA proposals to have hazard pay, right? In the NFLPA proposal, that the percentage, obviously, of revenue stays the same, which, again, the percentage is just awful. It used to be 64% of the cap way back in 1994. 64% of all revenue went towards the cap, which meant 67% of all revenue went towards accommodating the players in some form, whether it's salary and benefits. And then it just decreased every year. It was 55%, and then 50%, and now 47%. So wow. But if we keep the same percentage, we can still flatten out the impact by essentially rolling the deficit over. Instead of rolling over, cap space, you roll over cap deficit into years 2 and 3. And that proposal makes a ton of sense to me, right? The percentages are the same, but you make an estimation, right? And you say, well, this is what we lost in terms of revenue. Now we're going to take that loss and split it out and deduct from cap space in years 2 and 3, which protects players that are only going to play for 1 year, right? And then also it protects players from financial shock, right? And it's like very difficult to I don't care if Drew Brees or Tom Brady see a sudden dip in their incomes, but for players that their career they make $1.5 million because they played 3 years at minimum salary, a lot of it gets taxed away, first of all, which I think a lot of people kind of discount when they talk about player salaries. And so they've trained for 10 years to play in the NFL, right? From the time they're 15 to the time they're 25, they've trained for 10 years. And over those 10 years, they earn $1.5 million plus a couple thousand in college under the table, right? If they're really good in college. Okay, great. So that's $150,000 a year, except that all gets taxed at the highest rate federally, and then depends on the state, right? And so now they're making, I don't know what I can't do the back of the napkin math, but let's say generously 80,000, right? Which I think, would be generous. So $800,000 over the course of their career post tax. So now they've got $80,000 a year that covers those 10 years, and now no income for the rest of their life from this thing that they've been training from the beginning of their life. So they have to essentially get retraining. I feel for those players, right? I would love to make $80,000 post tax, but if I made $80,000 for 10 years and then nothing after that, that would kind of suck. And so this would help kind of ameliorate financial shock for those players. And that's a big thing, right? Because if you've expensed out your budget responsibly, an enormous financial shock can still have an enormous impact on the quality of your life and your ability to pay your bills and stuff like that. This is all stuff that needed to be hammered out over the course of the past couple of months. The NFL had a longer lead time than every other sport. And for them to not have solutions is irresponsible and dumb. It's just dumb.
So Delta BC Dad asks the other downer question, which is, what would cause the NFL to cancel the season once it started?
Well, so the obvious answer is like a player death, right? But I think that's the extreme answer. I think that there's a lot of scenarios where they cancel the season where that doesn't happen. And I think a high positivity rate would do that. And so high positivity rates that we've seen across a bunch of different college sports, I should say college athletic departments, right? Because some colleges are not releasing which teams, saw positive tests, has forced a bunch of colleges to alter their schedule in really dramatic ways. So the Ivy League has canceled all fall sports. I think a lot of them are being moved to the spring. And it's the Ivy League. They can absorb it a little bit better, but they still get a significant amount of football income. So that's something. All these conferences, the SEC, Big Ten, I think Pac-12, they've all gone to conference-only schedules. So they're going down to 9 games, 8 games, depends on the conference. And that allows them to shorten the schedule too and kind of reschedule the games and push them back into the season. But if that's the case, right, if the high positivity rates on players kind of entering the campus early is enough to, in some cases, cancel or postpone the season, and in some cases drastically cut down on the number of games by maybe even a third, right, then it would take probably something somewhat similar in the NFL, especially in a league where players have more power than they do in college. And so I would imagine just really high, drastically high positivity rates would do it. You wouldn't need something horrible to happen to somebody for the season to be canceled. I think just high positivity rates would do it. Although if someone's family member dies, then that I think would be a pretty significant stoppage. If an entire team cannot show up to a game, that might result in a discussion about canceling the season and maybe eventually canceling the season. If a couple of players begin exhibiting long-term effects over the course of a couple of months, like Von Miller, then yeah. Because these are their careers, right? If you're an above average player, if you've got a career of 6 years waiting ahead of you instead of 3, and then you contract a disease that limits your lung capacity for the next couple of years of your life, if not forever. Now you don't have a 6-year career. Now you have a 2-year career. So, yeah, I think high positivity rates would just be enough to do it. How high? I don't know. The NFL. So based off of the call that Sugarman held with the Vikings media, it seemed like the NFL is making the assumption that there's just definitely going to be players that come down with it, which fair enough. There have already been players that have come down with it. Ezekiel Elliott's another example, right? And I think like 8 other Cowboys, but I don't know if they ever released the names of those guys. But it's some 22-year-old that hasn't seen money forever. They finally get into money. They're going to celebrate, right? Which I actually don't hold anything against those people celebrating money, right? Okay, so you go out and for some reason your state hasn't cracked down on bars that refuse to do stuff like social distancing or whatever, right? Well, now everybody in the bar has it, and that includes the players that celebrated their money, right? Okay, well now you've got a super spreader scenario, right? And so if 10% of the NFL tested positive at some point, I would not be surprised if that at a time, I would say. I would not be surprised if that was enough to shut the whole season down. Now, if it's 10% over the course of like 8 weeks, maybe that wouldn't be enough. I don't know. It kind of depends on how the people who initially tested positive are dealing with it, right? But yeah, league of about 3,000 players that need to be tested if you account for not just everybody at training camp, but the people who get kind of cycled through rosters and practice squads and stuff like that. If we assume that like 0.03 rate or not 0.03, Jesus, that would be way too high. 0.03%, that the expected outcome is 0.9, is one player death, right? And I think there's a chance that it could be higher, but I don't think it would take a fatality. And that's assuming 100% of the NFL and none of the coaches and none of the staff or whatever get infected. I think a coach coming down with it and having a bad time would be enough to shut down the league. I think if a facility caught it, that would be enough to shut down the league. So those are the scenarios, and it's entirely possible that these protocols might be enough to prevent that kind of super spreading from happening. But yeah, I'm worried. I don't like. Well, this isn't a thing that's easy to model.
No, of course not. But if we're looking at facilities getting something and then dealing with it, you need not look any further than when MRSA ran rampant through Tampa Bay, and how they ended up kind of handling all that, and everyone just was told to avoid the place and everything. Like, I don't know if necessarily like the facility catching it ends up being an issue, but one person dies, 2 people die. Like, how beloved of a person has to end up passing before they decide this ends up being a bad idea. Like, for the same reason I can see what's going to end up happening in the fall with certain school districts of okay, well, we have to do from home for 2 weeks while we because we had enough people test positive at the school or families test positive, that we're going to have to do a couple of weeks away. We're probably going to have more bye weeks this year that are unexpected, that are not scheduled as a result of half an offense ending up testing positive because there's no evidence that this thing, once you get it once, you're fine. A lot of people are getting it twice. So it's one giant mess. The answer to Delta BC Dad is we don't know, because the NFL doesn't really have a contingency for this.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. Kenneth Allen asks, let's do something slightly more football oriented that's not incredibly depressing. Let's talk about Dalvin Cook for a moment. Kenneth Allen asks, would you be happy with a Derrick Henry-esque deal for Dalvin Cook this offseason, i.e. relatively large payday for 2 seasons, with basically nothing after?
Well, so that resolves one of the 2 concerns with that kind of deal, right? Which is that, was the last time I talked about this, I listed 10 to 12 players that running backs that signed deals above 4% of the NFL cap, approximate average value, and all but one of them turned out to be bad deals.
Exactly.
And the one that turned out to not be a bad deal is to be determined, right? Because it's Ezekiel Elliott. He's only had 1 year in the deal. Well, the problem with a lot of those is, the deal was kind of big, right? And guaranteed money that runs for a long time. Running backs break down. Okay, so now you're not on the hook for like 4 or 5 years. The thing is, the guaranteed money in these contracts doesn't extend beyond 3 years anyway. So a 2-year deal is not that significantly different. The other part of it, so you resolve kind of half of a concern, right? Which is that you're locked into a running back that's probably going to break down. The other part of it is that you're still locked into a running back contributing a significant amount of your cap to a position that is relatively easy to replace in the NFL. And that doesn't go away. Like, that's still true if you do the 2-year deal. So I would not be happy with it if it was a Derrick Henry-esque deal, because that's a lot of money, even if it's only 2 years. And it prevents the Vikings from pursuing free agency options if their window is still open, in 2021, which I think that's possible, right? If Justin Jefferson turns out to be a little bit better than you thought, if that secondary is working, now you can say, in free agency, lock up Anthony Harris and say, hey, 2 of those corner spots actually turned out really well. We just need to sign another corner. And this team is top 5 ready. If you sign Dalvin Cook to that deal, I don't know that you do that, because losing Dalvin Cook, I don't think takes you out of top 5 contention. Just draft a running back and have them compete with Alexander Madison. But if you have a couple of problems on your roster, now you can't use free agency to correct them, because now you're going to have to rely on hitting on the draft twice. Because for this scenario where their window's looking good, they'd have to hit on probably both Justin Jefferson and Jeff Gladney, and then maybe also Ezra Cleveland pretty early, which is a pretty unlikely scenario. And now you're asking them to repeat it. That seems like a lot. So I wouldn't do it. I think you still need the cap space, and it's relatively easy to replace.
Ian Pauly asks, which group will likely suffer more from a lack of prep time compared to normal off seasons? Wide receivers or corners?
Corners. Wide receivers tend to play well earlier in their career if they do end up being good receivers. And cornerbacks they play a reactive position that's highly technique oriented. And so I think the traditional view is that because cornerbacks, I think, have the second lowest average Wonderlic score, that it's not that difficult, but that's not the case. Cornerbacks have one of the longest lead times, along with tight ends and offensive linemen, in developing. And defenses are reactive. I think a lot of people assume that defenses are better in camp early on because offenses have to be these intricately designed things. That tends to not be the case. And we saw, I think, in the 2011 lockout, offenses did fine for a while. I'm going to have to double check that. But I think that specifically cornerbacks that have to shed a lot of their college habits and learn a lot of NFL stuff, especially if they have to learn to play press more often. I think defeating press, if you've never played against press before, is probably easier than playing press if you've never played press before. And then also, if you're going up against somebody that's never played press before and you've never played press before, you're probably going to win. So I think that that's a pretty decent microcosm of being a wide receiver and why that would be probably a better scenario for you to be in with limited lead time. So that's my guess. And maybe it's because I cover a Zimmer team and I know that corners take forever to learn, even if they're free agents, take forever to figure it out with Zimmer. Maybe that's coloring my response. Maybe league-wide that's not the case, but after acknowledging that, I still think that's probably the case.
Kyle Slaby asks, what was your favorite moment of the now defunct autonomous blue check free Twitter?
The way blue checks got around it. Well, first of all, I thought it was hilarious.
For those who don't know, on Twitter there was a hacking of sorts that affected a wide variety of high-profile checked means verified accounts, including Joe Biden, Barack Obama,
Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, I was going to say Bezos there. Yeah, a whole list of people who then said, hey, give me this, or I'm willing to give back. If you donate Bitcoin to here, then I will give money back to you. It's like, incredibly stupid. So Twitter had to take all the blue checks down.
Yeah, so it was an exploit specifically in the programming involving the verification thing. It's very bizarre to me. But yeah, they took down all the blue checks. So blue checks couldn't tweet. What's great is that blue checks couldn't tweet for like, I think, an hour, and then they could tweet for like 5 minutes, and then they couldn't tweet again for like 4 hours. Like, just that little window where they can tweet. Like, that's so cruel.
And some people who were verified had to go back to their old accounts that they used when they were put into Twitter jail.
Yeah, I've got like 8 different accounts, so I used 2 of them to, and because you can still retweet, so I just tweeted from the other accounts and then just retweeted them, which was fun. Felt very bizarre. I was like at first I was just retweeting my old tweets that applied to whatever was happening at the moment anyway. That was fun. If this had happened for an entire day, I'd probably begin to get pretty annoyed. I know some blue checks were just like, well, I don't even care about this blue check, and so they just got rid of it, and they were allowed to tweet again, which, like Leon, which is one of the greatest Twitter accounts ever, just decided to get rid of their blue check, which, great. Also, you can't fake being Leon, because he's one of the few people that has an animated avatar, like a GIF. Back when Twitter allowed it, and now it no longer allows it. But the people who had it back then, were grandfathered in. So they still get to have the animated avatar, and no one else does. And so it's kind of difficult to fake being that person anyway. Yeah. So, and they were able to tweet just fine, right? I, elitist coward, did not consider getting rid of my blue check. So I was just like, I guess I won't tweet. Man, people hate blue checks, though. Wow. I mean, I always knew that. People always hate blue checks, but it's just like, man, people went pretty wild. They were pretty excited.
There was some celebration there. People were able to do their ad darn Schefter stuff and with complete impunity. It's fantastic. Duke's Code asks, does EA intentionally give lower Madden ratings to certain players to both drum up the conversation around the game and obviously obfuscate the narrative that all they do is a roster update and reset the team rankings to milk the players of more money?
I don't think so. I think that their ratings are genuine. And it's maybe because I know the people who are on the rating team, and I talk to them every year. So, I'm hashtag biased. I'm sticking up for my hashtag friends in the industry, but
your hashtag friends, not friends, mind you, just
hashtag friends.
Mm-hmm. That's all you got.
Yeah, trust me, I know.
Wait, this got dark.
Yeah. Whoa. But no, I mean, I've sat in with them, in film rooms, right? Like, I've talked to them about the way that they grade. I wouldn't 100% believe that they grade genuinely. And for me to say, one of these guys is like my political opposite. We cannot talk politics to each other because we just start hating each other, right? And I would love to be able to throw dirt at him for any reason, right? Just to win an argument. You know me, I love winning arguments, right? But no, he's an ethical grader. Right? Like sure, every EA has gradings that are wrong and stuff like that. But whatever, who cares? It's tough, right? You got to rate 3,000 players. You got to have 75 individual ratings for all of them or whatever. And obviously, like, no one really cares if like the tight end's throw power is off. Like, when's that going to come up? Like, I guess, I mean, Carson Wentz. But other than that, it's like you had to, right? But yeah, it's a tough job, and I respect what they do. I respect what the people who put out their own ratings online and that people can download and upload themselves into their own Madden games. I respect what they do. In fact, that's how one of the ratings guys got their jobs. He did that, and now that's his job at EA, right? So I absolutely think that these ratings are genuine. They use a lot of data, right? They pay attention to like the next gen stuff. They pay attention to, the PFF stuff and the Sports Info Solutions stuff. They pay attention to all of that. And then they also, all of them do film work significantly. And here's the thing. Players will bring up their concerns to the ratings people all the time, obviously, right? And the ratings people will go out, well, not anymore because of COVID, will go out to them and talk to them. What part do you think is wrong? Why do you think it's wrong? Do you have evidence that your rating should be adjusted, right? And then they'll talk about it. And the player might bring up one play, and then the ratings adjuster will bring up other plays, and they'll have a discussion, right? And they'll be like, hey, I know you think you have 98 speed, but here's somebody with 95 speed that ran you down, right? So I don't know why I should give you 98 speed. Somebody with 95 speed ran you down on this play. And then they'll be like, well, you gave this guy, 96 speed, and I ran away from him. And they'll have a discussion. And usually the ratings adjusters are right? Because players always want to boost their grades, and they always think they're better than they are. That's how they get to the place that they are in the NFL, because your odds of making it to the NFL are impossible, so you have to believe impossible things about yourself to make it. And that's fine, right? And that's great. They all are absurdly confident in their own abilities. And so the ratings adjusters have to be like, look, this is my catalog of evidence to indicate that my ratings for you are accurate. And they do that. And so I don't think that they intentionally put out bad ratings, because it's the people who do the ratings. This is their baby. They love it. They love it. Now, the rest of the stuff surrounding Madden, I'm not going to defend. It is just a roster update. Yeah, they screw up franchise mode. I hate that they screw up franchise mode. That's the only mode. I don't play online with #friends. I just want to play franchise mode. And franchise mode sucks. That's not the ratings people's fault. I hate the microtransaction oriented MUT. Right, the Madden Ultimate Team stuff.
That is rather annoying.
It.
I know people who are addicted to it.
So much money,
but it's
it only takes a couple of people to be super into it for it to be way more profitable than franchise mode.
Yeah,
which is what sucks. But yeah, so and I don't think that there's a lot of overlap between the executives who see that MUT makes them more money for like just honestly a worse product, and the ratings people who they're not like, hey, you should say Tyreek Hill only has 94 speed. Everyone's going to be mad about that. And then people will talk about that. And now they won't talk about the fact that, like, we have another microtransaction mode in the works. Like, no, they're not going to tell them that.
Be like, see what happens in July is we put out the ratings as a way to like start arguments online in order to like remind people, oh, hey, there's a new Madden coming out, and then we release it in the middle of August, and then it becomes available. So it's like a slow rollout, a slow burn of all this. See, I like just playing the new Madden because I like seeing how pretty it looks like every year. Like slowly but surely, it looks like more realistic. There's certain, like, as soon as I get the new Madden, there's a few venues I like to go and customize it. Like, okay, Lambeau in ridiculously heavy snow. Okay, yep. For the night game or whatever. That's a cool one. Or the Viking Stadium. TCF was fun to look at in there too, but like how everything ends up looking and all that. So, but yeah, I don't think they're trying to manufacture it, but I wouldn't put it past them as like, all right, so we need to do a slow rollout to remind people there's a new Madden coming out. What are our ways of doing this?
The ratings release is just remarkable marketing. I also what was the thing that I saw? The throw power stuff got people really riled up. Which whatever, I don't know. Like, yeah, I agree that Russell Wilson is like a top 10 in throw power, and he wasn't in the ratings. And someone was like, Lamar Jackson's not top 10, which turns out it's not true. He was number 10. But like, it's probably true that Josh Allen is like top 3 in throw power. That doesn't mean he's like good at throwing the deep ball. In fact, famously, he was just awful at it last year, right? He was much better at the short passes, which is weird because that's not what his college career or his rookie year was about. But like, that's all throw power is how fast and far you can throw a football. And yeah, Josh Allen's up there. So like, okay, Mahomes is up there. There's some backup quarterbacks that I don't have strong opinions on that are up there. Sure, fine. Yeah. But like, yeah, okay, Russell Wilson probably has more throw power than Taysom Hill or whatever. So, yeah, they're wrong. But like, if I rated 3,000 players on 60 different attributes, 70 different attributes, 30 different attributes, I don't know. I'd definitely be wrong about a lot of them.
Also from Duke's Code, are you disappointed by the dystopic reality we live in? At least the worlds of the Hunger Games and Divergent had some cool technology.
Yeah, man, like our dystopia is like we stay at home for a while and then like we decided not to because we were angry about stuff, and so a city burned down. And it's like in the Hunger Games, they had like instantly producible genetically modified attack dogs that were also tigers, I guess. And birds that sounded like people you knew, which is all like terrifying, but it's like interesting. Also, new Hunger Games book out that takes place at the 10th Hunger Games. I don't know. I just bought it yesterday. I'm like 10 pages in. The allegory is like not there because it's like just 10 years into the Hunger Games system. And so the part about the Hunger Games that was like hitting you over the head with allegory, that's gone. So that's fine. And the blurb made me roll my eyes so hard I almost didn't want to buy it, but I, enjoyed the series enough that I was going to give it a chance. And I realized why I enjoyed the series so much 6 pages in. The world building is phenomenal. And the fact that you get the foundational stuff for when the Hunger Games first begin is really fascinating and interesting to me. The thing that makes me roll my eyes the most is that this is covering a person who's like the predecessor to President Snow in the Hunger Games. And it's like, I hate it when prequels feel the need to do like callbacks when they don't need to, right? It's like the Star Wars prequels, the thing that's wrong with them is not that it's about Anakin. It's like literally everything else about the prequels. It made sense from a story perspective to center on Anakin. Fine. But like, they didn't need C-3PO to be Anakin's thing, right? They like C-3PO did not need to be an Anakin robot. And there's tons of callbacks in the original Star Wars that make the universe seem like it's only 40 people. And that's kind of what this is doing. It covers like the protagonist is like the predecessor of President Snow, and his name is Snow, right? It's Coriolanus Snow or some weird, strange name, Snow. That's unnecessary to me. And that's what made me roll my eyes. And there's a bunch of other stuff in there. But the world building is so phenomenal. I'm already like pretty interested, like 10 pages in. Anyway, that's more interesting than the stay-at-home
yes.
dystopia. The stay-at-home dystopia sucks.
Next question is from Chris, who asks, assuming contract negotiations are worked out, what do you think it would mean for the Vikings offense if Dalvin Cook was second in receptions by the end of the season?
Honestly, I think this one's kind of up in the air, right? So there's a scenario where that means he's essentially Christian McCaffrey, and I think that's great, right? Because the ability to contribute through the air in a pretty meaningful way is, something that a running back can do that might distinguish themselves from other running backs and add value to the field. The unfortunate part of this is that running back receptions are worth less than tight end receptions, slot receiver receptions, and outside receiver receptions. And so it is possible that by doing that, the offense is getting worse. And so that's something to keep in mind. But it would mean that Dalvin Cook is effective. The other version of that is like almost catastrophically bad. It means Irv Smith has not developed the way that we wanted him to. It means Justin Jefferson's not ready to take on a big role, and that the offense is entirely reliant on Thielen. Even if you assume an offense that like spreads the ball out a ton, like 6 people touch the ball this game, 9 people touch the ball that game, and stuff like that. A scenario where a running back gets the second most receptions is a scenario where it is very likely that your secondary receivers are just not doing a very good job. And so that, I think, is the primary outcome if he's second in receptions. But I do want to admit that there is like this Christian McCaffrey-like outcome or early David Johnson outcome where you could be happy with that. But for you to be happy with that, he needs to be, not getting just a bunch of 9 and 10 yard receptions. He needs to be turning those into significant games at a fairly regular pace, which McCaffrey, I think, was doing. But most running backs don't do that with their receptions. And a lot of that's play design. A lot of that has to do with the fact that running backs are just not as good at receiving as receivers are, strangely enough. And so, yeah, there's a scenario where that's a good thing. I think the most likely scenario is that probably means bad things for the state of the offense. One
of those like, so all we're doing is checkdowns, huh?
Yeah. Or like, we can only do checkdowns because the pressure is too much, or Justin Jefferson's not good, it turns out.
Or all of a sudden we re-sign Christian Ponder, and here we are.
Great.
God, that's a terrifying horror movie. Also, don't look up Kanye West tweets right now.
Do not. Oh my gosh. Holy crap.
I got during the show, I got up to put the kids to bed, and I checked my Twitter account and was like, "Oh, why are Kanye West tweets on my timeline? Oh my God!"
Someone shared them into my group chat, and my only response was par for the course, yet somehow deeply disappointing.
Kenneth Allen asks, would you ultimately be satisfied if the Vikings won the Super Bowl during a shortened season, a la the 87 Washington team, or would the constant chattering of Packers fans that it, quote, doesn't count bring you down?
I mean, do like Dallas and Philadelphia fans say the Washington one doesn't count? I genuinely don't know. I assume they would say that. I guess like Washington like came up with one like 4 years later, so
yeah,
you know. It kind of resolves that concern.
I mean, like, as it turns out, what you had, you know, it's the example of like having the predecessor of a car. Like, as it turns out, the insides were fine. Like the body work and everything, the body of your team was fine. It was able to accomplish that again like 4 years later. So good. No, I don't think that. And since when should you care about what Packers fans think?
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I mean, you'll still have a parade.
Yeah,
if it's like not socially distanced.
We know who our quarterback's going to be next year. Do you?
Oh man, that's good. But yeah, it's a Super Bowl, and it's like, oh well, okay. So you've got supposedly the greatest quarterback ever and the greatest backup to him ever, and
that you traded up for, despite the fact that nobody wanted him.
And your dude couldn't win 9 games? Wow, tough. Like, that's my response. Wow, you couldn't win 9 games? Wow, well, it must not be that great then, huh?
Yeah. Kenneth Allen, yes, I think it should be fine. Alec asks 2 questions. One is football, one is not. Football question. You're building a team from scratch, new coaches, new players. What offensive playbook are you installing and building your team around?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the Shanahan one, the one that, you know, somehow made Jimmy Garoppolo look like he's better than he is, that made Matt Ryan look like an MVP, the one that worked well with the mobile Robert Griffin, which the basis for the McVay playbook. Now, obviously, it's just a playbook. You don't get to play color, but the good thing about both the McVay and the Shanahan systems is that they're fairly simple and you can build a team around them pretty easily. Obviously, you need a good play caller in addition to all that, but that's true for any offense. So I'm probably going with that just because they're quick to install, they're effective, they exploit a lot of tendencies in the NFL. One of the things I really like is how good they are in 1st and 10. So yeah, that's probably the offense I'm designing around. It's not that the other offenses are like, you know, the Earhart Perkins offense that Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels ran with Brady, obviously really fantastic. It's just really difficult to get the right pieces in place for that. You know, obviously, I think the Andy Reid offense is really spectacular, and so that's another playbook that you could go with. But I don't think it's as plug and play as the Kyle Shanahan ones. Like, I don't think a lot of Jimmy Garoppolo or Jared Goff as quarterbacks, and they did pretty fantastically. And when you've got a pretty good quarterback like Matt Ryan, you know, executing that offense, now you've got the MVP, right? And so there's that. I think for Andy Reid, you know, it's a good offense for a young quarterback to learn in. So it's not like it's completely out of this category. It's just not as easy or as flexible. Just not quite as the Shanahan playbook. But you know, I'm open to like other arguments on this. So yeah, I'm not married to this answer.
Non-football, best YouTube channel that starts you down random rabbit holes.
Odd Tinkering. They just restore stuff. So like they were like, I think the first one I watched was they restored an old translucent Game Boy, but they like restore like these like 1930s lamps and you know, the 1920s lighter, like a Vice from like 1890, a bunch of consoles. It's so cool. and they're like recommendations because they restore a bunch of different types of stuff. Like the recommendations go in wild places. So I posted like this one wood turning video I saw. It's like 25 minutes. I can't imagine anyone watched it, even though I tweeted it. But it's phenomenal, right? So I saw a wood turning video because it was based off of that recommendation. I saw some interesting videos about people modifying, an old SNES to contain a modern. It wasn't an SNES; it was a GameCube. To contain a modern, high-powered PC inside. You'd have to use like a mini ITX case and get like a Zotac specific 2070 because they're really small video cards and stuff. But it takes a lot of work. But they did it, and I think that's really cool. And I saw a bunch of other restoration channels. Obviously, this got me down some of the engineering parts of YouTube, which is kind of cool, like the Practical Engineering channel. The guy in the Practical Engineering channel has a 5-part series on concrete. It is like Andrew Luck's wet dream, and it is genuinely fascinating. Like I watched all 5 of the videos. I actually had already seen a lot of his videos earlier, so that might be why I popped in my recommendations. But they were attached to these videos about restoration, and I watched all the concrete videos, and I was genuinely entertained, which I did not expect. So Odd Tinkering is the name of the channel, and they do some great restoration. Honestly, it's like good to fall asleep to, right? Because like there's no voices; it's just the sound of a workshop, and so you watch somebody restore something like magic, and then you go to bed watching their next video, and you just fall asleep. The only problem is like if you're like on a tablet or a phone, the ads will still play at the end of videos. And so like you'll watch them like
awake.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh wow, this wood turning video is like really relaxing, and then you fall asleep, and then like, have you had man soap? It's better than other soap. It's natural Squatch soap. And I'm just like, good Lord, stop yelling at me about
this mailbag is now brought to you.
Soap is.
This mailbag is now brought to you by Man Soap. Man Soap. Have you had Man Soap?
And they ask a bunch of chicks like how like they go to the beach and they see all these hot women and they're like, does this smell good? Would you screw your boyfriend if he smelled like this? And they'd be like, yes, this is great. Like, okay. I was just trying to watch somebody make a pot or a vase out of wood, man. This is unnecessary.
Like, I feel like your targeted advertisements are slightly off here.
Right? Well, it's like, okay, there's a good chance that the likely viewer of a wood turning video it probably leans male, probably leans. Actually, I don't know what age range that would lean. So that might be open, but probably leans male. So maybe that's why they targeted. But it was just like, this is not what I needed. I need you to yell at me about my feminine artificial soap. It's like the
lack of pheromones in your soap. The lack of, yes, that. For me, this is where I turned into the old man. I have had like entire days worth of YouTube whole, like just falling further down into the rabbit hole of like metal detecting World War II battlefields. And actually, the actual channel is Metal Detecting WWII for 2 Battlegrounds. And what they do is they go around with metal detectors to all these famous battle areas. They go into the forests, they go into the water, and they find all of these discarded weapons, these helmets. If you go deep down into the rabbit hole, you'll find people in Russia who are still excavating soldiers from the Battle of Stalingrad, and so they end up returning the bodies to either Germany or have them buried with military honors in Russia. But like it goes deep, and you're just sitting there just fascinated by the end of it. Like, I shouldn't know exactly what the stock is for this specific type of rifle. I have no real interest in firearms, but I'll sit and watch that and go, oh yeah, that's and that's definitely the locking piece that ends up going there. Like, there is no need for me to know this, but here I am. So definitely that. Simone Gertz is the
oh my god, yes, absolutely,
the queen of crappy robots. And her channel is amazing, and
phenomenal.
She you'll end up watching like one or two of those and like, okay, well, I'm just going to end up watching all of them. And
her like, didn't she like modify a Tesla into a pickup truck before they invented the Cybertruck?
Yep, she did that and likely caused them to decide, okay, well, we're going to make the Cybertruck. And regardless of the fact that it looked terrible and laughable and everything, she then proceeded to bring her truckula out, and there were pictures of the two of them taken when they told her not to bring it. So.
Wow. Okay, I didn't see the follow up. That's great.
Yeah, the follow up video is pretty great.
Her stuff is fantastic. Her stuff is fantastic.
Yeah. So definitely something worth looking at. At one point, there was a really good one on how to make, or it's like using 20,000 matches to make a coffee table. And
I saw that one.
And the controlled burn and everything. You just said like, wow, there's a lot of work there by someone who knows way more about just about every topic on the planet.
Right, yeah. Every knowledge base that this tangentially touches upon, they're like encyclopedias ahead of me.
Yeah. And for a food one, I don't know if you've watched any of Guga Foods is the name of the channel.
Oh, yeah, I love Guga.
Yeah.
And the same like guitar riff plays every time he sears the meat. Oh,
every time. He's the reason, he is the exact reason I went out this winter and picked up a little fan that you can put at the bottom of your stack of coals in the container, in the chimney.
Yeah.
He is the reason I picked one of those up. Because you see it all like sexy and like how well it works, and all the coals are just emitting this orange flame above, and he's shaking the coals out and it looks all dramatic and everything is like, yeah, he is the exact reason why I picked one of those up for $24.95.
I love it. Ninja, what do you think? Amazing. God, I love that channel so much.
There is, you know, the reason why, the two reasons why people watch, or three reasons, the two main reasons why people watch food YouTube channels like that is for like their reactions or whatever. And the reactions are fairly interesting. You want to be able to learn something, and I have actually learned something from the Google videos. But then there's just the sheer like rubbernecking of, I'm sorry, what are they doing? They're covering a steak in pineapple, like crushed pineapple, for like a day to see if that ends up breaking it down more. Oh, and it does end up making it more tender. You're kidding. Okay, well, maybe I can put that to use.
Write that down. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, their commitment to experimentation and blind taste tests, while it probably doesn't meet any statistical significance standards, is actually really good. I like it. You know, and when a counterintuitive result occurs, they like embrace it. Like one time, they tested like garlic, right? They were like, well, what's the best way to get a garlic flavor into a steak? You know, is it crushed garlic? Is it diced garlic? Is it garlic powder? And then they've got a control, and they hated the idea of garlic powder. And it turns out, because it's the most granular form, it actually imparted not just the best flavor, but also the most garlicky flavor into the steak. And he was, but spoiler for that video, by the way. And he was just shocked, and he's like, "Well, that's the truth, I guess." Like, it was great.
You know, and they made something that I want to do once in my life, and I just haven't, because their reaction to it was so amazing. Was the Heaven's Tomahawk is the name of it. It was like a steak. It was a tomahawk steak that was all wrapped up in this like Brazilian cheese and everything. And I was like, you know, that wouldn't be terribly difficult to do. Also, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. Like. Not sure if I'm ready for that level of like adaptation for things. Next question is, Nolan, which Viking hexed the moon, and who is the old witch that can save us? Again, if you would like to know more about the hexing of the moon, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/norsecode.
Which Viking would be the one to hex the moon, though?
It's gotta be, it's Kirk Cousins.
No, there's no. I think Kirk Cousins would learn as much as you can about how to hex the moon, but he wouldn't do it. Like, he'd just be like, wow, this is pretty interesting. This is how you hex the moon. But honestly, it would have been Stephon Diggs. I could 100% have believed Stephon Diggs hexed the moon.
Yeah, actually, I can
But
believe that. Can we just
yeah,
use Stephon Diggs as the answer?
let's just use Stephon Diggs as the answer. That's too good of an answer.
Yeah. A side note: if you really want a new Vikings jersey that's official, go over to Shields and pick up a Stephon Diggs jersey of any size for like $20. Went through there the
What a
other day.
steal!
It is. Listen, I'm never going to cheer against him. I'm never going to be like, well, it would take a lot. It would take like several Adrian Peterson style scandals in order for me to like be upset about Diggs. So now is your time to pick it up and point at it every time you run into, say, a Saints fan. Wes asks, I bought an entire bag of russet potatoes because it was cheaper than just buying two. Now I have way too many to use just making baked potatoes. What creative use of these super starchy tubers do you suggest?
So
you got a Hasselbeck at some point, right?
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I think using them as the structural foundation for other dishes, like layering potatoes in another dish, russets are really great for that. I'm going to link a Serious Eats piece about russet potatoes and what to do with them. Because there's like a ton of ways to use russet potatoes that are not just baked potatoes. But to me, the best mashed potatoes I've had, and Dusty and I have had a ton of episodes where we've talked about like mashed potatoes specifically, and Dusty has like clued me into a bunch of really great ones. So russets by themselves make just like not great mashed potatoes. It's like it's just not good, the type of starch it is. And I think reds make very poor mashed potatoes just by themselves because it ends up being like really gluey and stuff. But the two starches together interact to create really phenomenally fluffy, well-bound mashed potatoes. So if you combine russets with reds in mashed potatoes, I think that's astonishing. It's really good. So that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to link a thing about russet potatoes in the show notes. I know that there's like a thing about Hasselbeck potatoes and sous vide. We were just talking about the Guga channel. They love sous vide. I don't know what that's about, but it doesn't sound good. Like compared to like baking a potato, which is like foolproof, but then also you get like, the Maillard reaction and a drier potato, both of the things that you want in a baked russet potato. But I'll take a look at that. Maybe you can use them to pre-cook French fries so that you only have to fry them once for them to turn good. I don't know, but that's a thing I'll take a look at and put in the show notes as well.
Yeah, I would go with twice baked potatoes, which are probably
so good.
Yeah, number one
way
or number two
potatoes.
Of my favorite type of potato. Like it's
way better than just like baked potatoes.
Yes, so
good.
Twice baked potato. Don't skimp on the bacon on that. And Hasselbeck, which is the thinly sliced potato while it's still like in baked form, and then you can put things in it like chicken or cheese. Most people put some form of cheese in it, and you can end up chicken. Sorry, I was thinking people do Hasselbeck their chicken and do like a cheese and like herb thing in between, which is kind of interesting. But Hasselbeck your potato. That is. Yeah, you can't.
There's a joke here to be made about like a backup quarterback or something, but whatever.
It's gonna take you to the Super Bowl, damn it. Big Tony asks, what has done more for the popularity of the NFL, Madden or fantasy football?
Fantasy football. I think anytime you've got the ability to put money on an outcome, you become more invested in the outcome. Madden is a represent, and I'm not going to say Madden did not do much to accelerate the popularity of the NFL, but like MLB's The Show is like the best sports game, right? Football Manager
players
is a
can play it for
game.
Actual research purposes.
Yeah, the show is incredible, right? Football Manager is an incredible soccer management game. NBA 2K has gotten really, really good, and Madden sucks. Like relative to them, right? And so obviously you can't just use like, because there's so many things that go into why a sport is popular, but like it doesn't seem to me that like MLB's The Show has done enough to make baseball more popular. And baseball revenues are way higher than people seem to think, but like, so it's not as if baseball is dying in the way that people think. They just use regional TV instead of national TV a lot more. But fantasy football, and obviously fantasy baseball took off too, but fantasy football it introduced me to the game. Maybe I'm biased. Introduced me to the game, introduced so many people to the game, and made people who were already into the game way more into the game. And it gave you a reason to keep track of player stats. It gave you a reason to pay attention to schedules. It gave you a reason to watch teams that weren't your own. And I don't think Madden gives you a reason to watch football that much. So I don't think it's close. I think fantasy football did way more.
I think you're right too, because I've been to fantasy drafts with people who would not have had an interest in watching, but do because of their fantasy team that they got roped into because they had to sit down with the family because somebody forced them to be a part of a family draft. So I could definitely see the fantasy side of things. Not that Madden hasn't helped, but I think fantasy has ended up doing more for them. Michael asks, since there is no state fair, what fair food trucks do you recommend making a drive for? I've only seen a few online groups sharing locations of a few, but I'm not sure what to pick.
Yeah. I don't know. I probably should have looked this up, but there's like a food finder app, right? So I would recommend that. Let's take a look at this map and answer your question in real time. Oh my God, it's a Facebook group. I don't want to do this.
I just want to see an advertisement for man soap. Like that actually greets you at the top.
It's okay. Wow, this is taking forever to load. Okay, it's a Facebook group that links to a Google map. You're kidding me. Why didn't you just link me to the Google map?
I'm not editing any of this. This is...
All right, so we've got a lot. Blue Loon Concessions, egg rolls on a stick, Sarah's Tipsy Pies. That sounds fun. I recommend that based off the name alone. Fried ice cream. I recommend that if you've never had fried ice cream. It's strangely phenomenal. A bunch of mini donuts, Minnesota Wing King, cheese curd tacos. Never had that. I wouldn't go out of my way. Okay, most of these aren't branded. They're just like, this is fair food. Like, thanks. It's like a food court. Okay, I don't need you to do this. Yeah. Okay. So don't click on the map. It's BS and not great. But if there's a Sweet Martha's food truck, I'd recommend that. I don't understand how that would work, honestly, but hopefully it does. Anytime you can get like random stuff on a stick. I know there's deep fried sushi on a stick. You can get that. I love the big bacon on a stick. It's just bacon.
God, that having that once, took at least a year off my life.
It's a lot. And then the deep fried candy bars, which I was originally introduced to 10 years ago, maybe even longer. And I remember it was like just like a kind of a joke item. People were like, yeah, it's just deep fried candy bars, put it on a stick. That sounds like fair food. And it is now like one of the most popular foods at the state fair. I can't imagine that they don't have like a truck. It's so good. I cannot believe what you can, like, how much better a Snickers bars get when you batter it, fry it, and put confectioner sugar on top. Like,
Victor had one. My younger brother Victor had one, and he said right afterwards, after the Snickers bar, he said, "I have touched the face of God," and then he needed to sit down. Like, wow, dude, did you just have the moment from the food critic in the movie Ratatouille? Like.
Wow, finally, Victor and I have something in common. No, I had an ecstatic reaction the first time I had it. And I've had all of the candy bars at the deep fried candy. I like the Oreos and the Milky Way, and I think there's another one. And the Snickers, to me, is by far the best. And it's the first one I had, so maybe that's, why. But holy crap. I'm so glad that there's no deep fried candy bar truck right outside my house, because I would just go every single hour, maybe, certainly every day.
Be like, what would really help the creative juices right now? I'm at this block. I probably just need like 4 of them right now. Can we just get this like intravenous? Can I just get like a bag? Can I just get the drip of this? Fantastic. Don from Ohio asks, are you guys wearing a mask as you tape these episodes, or do you suffer from carbon monoxide poisoning after 30 minutes of wearing them?
I'm not wearing a mask inside my house, and it's not because I'm scared of trapping in my own breathing gases. That's not really how these masks work, man.
No, not particularly. My favorite part of the wearing the mask thing is taking it off, but not for reasons why you'd think that. All of a sudden the smell of where you're at is like, oh my, like,
yeah, right? Yeah, this is what it's. So for a long time, Chelsea and I were wearing these like really cool looking masks. We got them off of Etsy, then we put in like a carbon filter to get them working, and they look great. But now there's a bunch of KN95s at like Ace Hardware and stuff. And you have to be careful because like it's difficult to like verify which ones are like actual KN95, which ones are marketed as KN95. But we did our best, and they look awful, but they're like cheap and readily available, and you don't have to wash them because they're disposable. And so now we just look like ducks outside, and now it's just like, well, the old masks are a pain, but I want to use them way more. It's a struggle every time. The KN95 masks are cheap, easy, readily available, and I look like a duck. I hate it.
I really feel like if you want to encourage people to wear masks, you really should have your picture taken while doing your doing your best Donald Duck, and just put that as your avatar. I did for my personal account. I feel like you have far more followers than I have. You should, just.
I'm not. This is a psyop. You're tricking me right now.
Take the picture.
I'm not falling for it.
If you want. There's nothing more American, nothing more patriotic than wearing these masks, from what I read today. So why don't you be a patriotic American and have your picture taken and put it up on the Twitterverse? I'm just
you
saying.
Got your lying voice right now. This is like, you're tricking me.
I do not have a lying voice. I have many voices. I don't have a lying voice.
Ask your wife if you have a lying voice.
We're just going to let her sleep. Next question is also from Don from Ohio. He asks, hey, I don't have a house yet, and we're completely packed up, and the lease is up at the end of the month. Which one of you guys am I staying with?
We both decided before the show it was James.
Yes. Just
get that out there.
We're just... You don't want to be in Minneapolis right now. You want to be in Stinktown, USA, Grand Forks, North Dakota, for when the moment where the wind picks up off of the English coulee, and that the smell just envelops all of Grand Forks, and this gut wrenching just ugh. We were discussing before the show, and like, yeah, this could probably work. Don can just park his RV out in the street. I'm sure we can find some way of doing the sewage thing that's not entirely illegal. Maybe. This'll be fine. And Arif is right. I haven't entertained in a while, and I'm sure my skills are needing to be sharpened. So I will greet you in the morning with a big bag of a cereal with just a little bit of water in it, just because you keep reminding me that I did that once while ridiculously tired. Ass.
It's just I love the idea of Don being introduced to all the food eccentricities of the Pagashnik household.
Well, I have
whether that's cereal and water or human flesh.
I have, was it yesterday?
Lemons, many lemons.
Our kitchen is amazing. It has only gotten better. My wife has decided that our kitchen needs to be sweet lemony lemon themed, and my God, it is. It is a thing of beauty. And the problem is that we haven't had a bunch of people over to look at our lemons. But it does mean that we check our lemons often to make sure no one's stealing them in their mesh tops. But our kitchen truly is this beautiful thing of wonder. Ricardo has two questions that are kind of long, but it felt like it was important enough to include them here at the end of the show. Ricardo says, the wife and I recently welcomed our second daughter. Pause for scorn from Arif. During my many
No, congrats. Come on, man. I'm happy for you.
During my many hours of being unable to sleep, while also being too tired to do anything, to accomplish anything useful, pause again for James to explain this to Arif. Arif, this happens often. So often. I have tensed towards self-reflection. I have always viewed myself as an okay person. Think Mal at the end of the Firefly episode Shindig. Spoiler alert, there are multiple stabbings involved.
All good questions start with, I always think of myself as an okay person.
However, an inventory of my recent thoughts has me questioning this, so I'm seeking outside opinions. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being Ellen Page and 10 being Arif, ouch, how bad a person do the following statements make me appear to be? Recently, while at my supermarket, I found myself genuinely missing the way things were 2 months ago. That is to say, deserted.
You miss the deserted supermarket? Okay. I don't know, like a 2 or a 3. That doesn't seem that bad. Like, I understand the circumstances for why a supermarket was deserted was like tragic, but like missing the fact that you don't have to deal with like people and all the energy that takes. That's fine.
It's funny because I'll pull up to the Walmart here, or one of the 2 Walmarts in Grand Forks, and I'll see the large number of people. And it's not a large number of people as of like the year before. But now it's just like, do I really want to go through this right now? Or do I want to shop later where they're just going to be announcing every 2 minutes that they're closing? I think I'm going to try to do that instead. When Stefan Diggs appears in the Madden 20 menus in a Vikes uniform, I become profoundly sad.
1. I don't think that makes you a bad person. It's reasonable to be sad about that.
When I check my podcast feed and the Norse code is over 2 hours. Oh.
He's not sad, right? He's not sad when it's over 2 hours. So that's good for us. But no, that does make you a bad human. That's like an 8.
Yeah, that's a pretty bad sign. Also, while listening to your last episode, I said aloud, no, not the Patriots, in response to the guest suggestion of possible below-board activity, seconds before Arif said the same thing. For the record, I was alone in my car speaking to myself, which I can't tell if it makes it worse.
Being able to predict what we're going to say and how we're going to say it, and then saying it out loud to yourself alone in the car, that's about a 9. That's not as bad as me on the Alan Page to Arif Hassan scale, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, it's not great. Also, each morning while feeding my daughter breakfast, I make her listen to a late 80s hair metal. This can't possibly go wrong. Does this constitute child abuse, and should I expect a CPS visit? Follow-up, are Guns N' Roses hair metal? Amazon seems to think so. P.S. Watching a 2-year-old rock out to Cherry Pie is equal parts hilarious and disturbing.
I agree with the PS. Also, this part of the email was titled Uncle Arif's Parenting Corner, which is phenomenal. So... does this constitute child abuse? Should I expect? So the question here is, because there's a certain, we always knew like somebody in high school, right? That was like super into like retro music, whether it was like the Beatles or like 70s music or 80s music, whatever, right? And like a certain amount of years ago, that's like a fine aesthetic and is kind of cool, and they were kind of quirky and artsy, and that was kind of cool. But it's like a surprisingly narrow band of time they can be into that music. And so when I was in high school, I think it was 60s music, right? So if you're into 70s music, that was like fine, but not weird. If you're into 50s music, that was really weird. What the hell?
And
if you're into 80s music,
the stoners were the ones who were walking around with the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon shirts.
Yeah. If you're into 80s music, I didn't want to know you, but like
walking around with an Asia shirt.
Right.
Boom, boom, clap.
And then I was into 90s music, so obviously that was the coolest thing, and everybody was my friend. But
everyone was your hashtag friend.
Yeah, right. And mind you, I was in high school in like the mid 2000s, so it was like everybody was not into 90s music. That was just me, and I would blame my brother for it, but I definitely just made a choice.
No, you just made a choice. The Counting Crows were the way, the truth, and the light. Yeah,
okay, I don't like the Counting Crows. I don't hate them, but it's just like whenever I have a 90s music playlist, I just skip right past them. It's not the Counting Crows. It's like objectively worse music than that. Like Eagle Eye Cherry and the Gin Blossoms. And
how dare you speak ill of the Gin Blossoms?
I love the Gin Blossoms so much, man. I just can't like justify it to anybody else. The band that Bob Dylan's son is in, the Wallflowers. Yeah. One Headlight plus the other song they did. Was that band that was a hair metal band and then just became a 90s like soft rock band? Goo Goo Dolls. Like they were into like crazy hardcore metal, and then they did one power ballad, I think it was Iris, and it did really well, and they were like, well, I guess that's us now. And then they got completely sold out, and they just did that.
You know what?
And I loved it.
You know what other band did that you wouldn't have expected? Sugar Ray.
That's right.
If you listen to Sugar Ray's first album, it's much more reminiscent of like Rage Against the Machine as a party band, or like Faith No More, than it is what they later became, which after they put out every morning.
Because it was like Every Morning or whatever song it was.
They did Every Morning.
And then they were like, that's us now.
Yeah, this is our thing. I caught them in concert once because somebody gave me a free ticket. I was like, okay, I'll go. And I was blown away. I was like, when the hell did they become a metal act? This is crazy. All they did was play off their first record and like, oh, well, this is a hit and this is a hit. Also, here's like 20 minutes of just like straight metal. And you're like, what the hell?
Did I share this story about the Goo Goo Dolls on this podcast where there was like this weird show where they would wow, we talk a lot about renovating shows on this podcast. They'd renovate a room of somebody's house that was like a fan of their music. Like, did I bring this up?
I don't think so, no.
Wow, okay. It's weird that I've told the story multiple times then. So there's the show where a band would renovate a super fan's house, but really just like one room in their house, according to like the band's taste. And for the most part, it went like spectacularly well, right? And this one was going pretty well, right? Like the room needed a renovation anyway, and so they did it up. But like at the very end, they leave some music behind, and the bands like are never gauche enough to leave their own music. They leave the music of like plus it wouldn't be useful, right? It's a super fan; they already have all your music, right? And so they leave all the music of their influences. And again, the Goo Goo Dolls were not a soft rock band at the beginning of their career. So their musical influences are all of these like thrash metal, acid rock kind of bands. And so they leave that behind, which is just an astounding move, in my opinion. But this person had only gotten into the Goo Goo Dolls for all of the soft poppy music that I was super into. And so they do the whole thing. The person freaks out. The room is amazing. They love it. And they're like, yeah, this is the music that we like. And like, oh my gosh, we should play it. And they play it and they are mortified. They have no idea what's happening. It's amazing.
So they're like, man, Iris really spoke to me. What's Queensryche? I don't, is that how you pronounce that? I don't. White Lion. What is this?
White Lion's the supermodel on the car, right?
No. That's White Snake.
Who's the supermodel on the car?
White Lion.
Oh my God.
White Lion was had the song "When the Children Cry," which was a power ballad, and I hate the fact that I know that.
We got our own Chuck Klosterman here on this podcast.
Oh God, don't. I know too much to answer the question in the mailbag. However, are Guns N' Roses considered hair metal? Yes, they should be considered.
Absolutely, they're like the second wave of hair metal, right?
They were near the end of it, and they should still technically count. Just like Poison was a better example because they truly were hair metal, and when they hit the 90s, they still made it.
This is what I was going to bring up: is that Poison is probably the band that you would say you would compare things to determine if they were hair metal, and Guns N' Roses is close enough to Poison, I think.
Yes.
So you'd call it hair metal. I was going to bring up exactly Poison.
It would qualify as hair metal. Bon Jovi is one that slowly became not, but Guns N' Roses still technically should be considered hair metal, and they didn't really die out until what, 93, 94. So despite the fact that they were able to make it into the 90s at a time when most of them died after Nirvana hit, like
grunge ate them.
Yeah, as soon as the Pacific Northwest entered the rock era,
I just can't get over. Alice in Chains were a hair metal band, and then grunge started happening, and they were like, you know what, this is what we're gonna be. Like, we see the shape of things to come. So it's not even like the Goo Goo Dolls where they like had a hit, and the Goo Goo Dolls were like, well, that's what's making us money, so we'll do that. They were like, okay, we can see the future, and this is not great. Like I think Alice in Chains and Candlebox did that. They were like, okay, this metal thing is not going to last through grunge, so we're grunge now. Alice in Chains even changed the spelling of their name.
Yeah. Well, sometimes
Guns N' Roses survived that somehow.
Yeah, well, Slash is a powerful man. Also, watching a 2-year-old rock out to Cherry Pie is equal parts hilarious and disturbing. Yes, I would agree. I have a friend who would play the 90s channel on her on Sirius all the time, and apparently her then 3 or 4-year-old daughter knew all the lyrics to California Love, and I'm just sitting there just going, boy, First off, that's amazing that your daughter is able to recall all that. Second off, I'm not so sure. Like I'm a huge Nine Inch Nails fan, and I still like skip songs that have swearing in the car when I've got the 7-year-old or the 6-year-old in the car. Like
a lot of skips, man.
Not as depending on the album, but
fair enough, yeah.
Spotify is getting better about labeling explicit songs, where I have to sit there and go, okay, are we listening to this one? Yeah, like where is it in this? Okay, yep, turn it down. There we go. Can't listen to that album. There's actually swearing in the title of that one.
So back to the question about whether or not this constitutes child abuse. So the question is, I think the way to answer this is, if your daughter grows up to be the kind of person that goes onto whatever the equivalent to YouTube is, which is probably YouTube, and comments on like Guns N' Roses videos, I hate what my generation has become, this is real music, then yes, it's child abuse. You can't have your kids just saying my generation makes bad music while only talking about the hits from previous generations. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But if it's kind of cool, or at least cool among a couple of people, and you're projecting forward and you're a parent, so you don't know what's going to be cool. But you're projecting forward like 15 years into their life. Are they going to be able to find a niche in high school of people that like at least tolerate this like quirk and the art that like springs out from it? Then no. But like, again, there were people in my high school that loved 50s music and they sucked, and that was definitely child abuse.
Jesus.
So be careful.
I had parents who, I had a parent in this case that was really into the rock band Kiss. Like it seemed to be the only thing that he ever listened to in the car. And
that's hilarious.
It was the only thing he listened to. And as a result, you know, as a kid,
I didn't know that about him. That's hilarious. Trying
to get like his parents, his dad's approval or whatever, and, you know, you would sit and listen to that, and like you'd pick up the lyrics to it. And you know, I had a cousin whose dad did something similar. Now he went totally in a different direction and ended up going the route of like meeting them and getting their faces tattooed on his arms and everything. So no, I don't suggest to that extent. That things went wrong there, but. The thing is that you end up getting some sort of like a psychological attachment to it. Now, if I hear a song, it's like you have a positive memory. I have a friend who's still trying to figure out a way to get Hall & Oates, you're making my dreams come true, be his daughter's first dance song with her dad, like, you know, the father-daughter dance at a wedding. He's been trying.
That's a lot of planning.
He's been trying since birth to like associate it with him, so that when she gets married, that's going to be the song. And I looked at him. I know that
all parenting is like secretly mind games, but that's a lot.
That it's farming. It really is farming. You're just.
I'm gonna imprint this onto my child.
It is. You don't know whether or not this is actually going to end up working. A lot of parenting is farming, and you're just hoping that they come out of it slightly less damaged than, the worst case scenario. You want them to leave thinking that they have some sort of like idea as to what's going on in the world and be somewhat emotionally balanced. And so he is trying like hell, or has since birth, to make it so that becomes the song that they do the first dance to. Now, I warned him, if you push too hard, this becomes a situation of trying to create a nickname for yourself, because you can never create a nickname for yourself. You should never, because the opposite always ends up happening.
Right.
Someone ends up coming in and re-nicknaming you, and that's the one that sticks. It's a karma thing. So he could do this.
There's a fine line here that he's got to ride. Like, maybe 1 out of every 15 car rides at best.
Yep. You gotta you gotta play it slow. You have to play it slow there. Otherwise, it doesn't end up working. It all goes to crap, and you end up having a father-daughter dance of a Queensryche song. Queensryche is just the band that's stuck in my head right now.
Ultimate conclusion, I'm going to say it's not child abuse, but be careful.
Yes. Let's tread lightly, and cherry pie with a 2-year-old would be hilarious. All right. That is going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Arif, what do you have to plug?
Oh God, the training camp guide is like being published right now, position by position. Offensive line is out. Defensive line is, I think, Wednesday, hopefully. I haven't finished it, so who knows when it is. But the plan is Wednesday. Again, it's a breakdown of every player on the roster, position by position, except for specialists, because I don't know how to scout that. And it's a scouting report, strengths, weaknesses, fit on the team, and a small discussion about the role in the team. It's a way to get kind of introduced to every player. It's a way for me to get an understanding of what every player brings to the table. It's in depth, right? So that's the hope and the idea. So
it's a
that's
reason
the
why,
Athletic, and that's all I'm doing.
It's a reason why a lot of you have come to listen to the show, is because you were introduced to Arif through the training camp guide, or you'd heard about the training camp guide through it. So if you would like to find that again for this year, you can go to theathletic.com and take a look. Obviously paywall, but the Athletic's work is worth it. So that is going to. Am I shilling for your work? What the hell? You don't shill for University of Minnesota stuff.
You should attend U of M Crookston. It's a high class institution. It's the right campus size. Honestly, it's not too many. It's not too little. And the academic standards are very high. It's no U of M Morris from an academic standards perspective, but if I'm being completely honest.
Well, what
it's
is?
Still in the university. Yeah, right, exactly. It's still in the University of Minnesota system. Really phenomenal stuff. What's their mascot, James?
It is the Golden Eagle, which you can justify.
Way better than a gopher. Holy shit.
It is. They can eat a... Somebody was like, how can you justify going to the U of M and working there instead of working at UND? And I was like, yeah, the Gophers and everything. I was like, yeah, but the Golden Eagle can eat a golden gopher, so it doesn't matter. If you're looking for some sort of a justification, there's already something wrong with you. But that is going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you've enjoyed it. Again, we have a bonus episode up on Patreon for you. That should be up on Wednesday if you are interested in such a thing. But for Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much. And please remember to check in on your hashtag friends. And we'll be back soon. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan, and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and co-host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can make your one-time donation at paypal.me/NorseCode, or a recurring monthly contribution can be made by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. Any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can also be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.